The whole world keeps chasing success as if that's the ultimate in life. But let's spend a few minutes today to discuss why, in my view, failure is far more important than success. My name is Viiveck Verma. I've spent 35 years in the corporate world, and for a lot of people I stand today as a successful entrepreneur. But I stand here today to talk to you about all the failures I've had in my life, which have actually led me to succeed and to get to where I am today. We all come from, at least some of us come from the Indian context of living in a world where, in my view, success is an overhyped, over-imagined concept. We revolve so much of our life around success that we forget that actually, from a learning perspective, from a growth perspective, and from what I call an entrepreneurship mindset perspective, failure is far more important than success ever will be. And I think that is where contextually my belief is that we need to change that thinking. We need to change that mindset, because learning and growth will come when we learn to fail and we learn from a failure and move ahead. Right from our early days in our school, our teachers, our parents, the society, they all put so much pressure on us, and we do that even with our children today, on success. What was your rank in school? Did you come first in the race? Were you ahead of whatever you are doing, whether studies, education, extracurricular activities? That quite often people's understanding of failure and people's understanding or empathizing with failure is lost. And I think learning is coming only from failure. If I succeed, I start living in that world of stardom, in that world of glamour. And quite often I don't learn. And when we come to looking at it more closer from an entrepreneurial standpoint, and entrepreneurship from my perspective is never about startup. Startup is just an outcome of entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship, in my view, is a way of life, is the way of thinking, is a mindset. An entrepreneurial mind is saying, I will find a problem around me, I will find a solution to that problem, I will find a method to scale that solution, and I will find a way to monetize it. Now, the fourth stage is when a startup is born. But the first three stages are not restricted to a startup. That can be done by a homemaker, a college student, a school children, or anyone else. So in that, failure is a very important thing, because if someone experiments and fails, the person can choose to walk away with regret, or the person can choose to walk away with learning from the failure. And I think that choice is what determines the future. And I see that if you can walk away with the learning and a failure from that incident, then you have learned a lesson for life. No textbook can teach you what a failure can teach you. And I think that's where it's very important for us to inculcate this awareness about failure is not a bad thing. What is bad is not to learn from a failure. As the cliche goes, you don't make a mistake twice. The first time you make a mistake, it's a mistake. The second time you make the same mistake, it's not a mistake. It's a choice you make because you didn't choose to learn from the first mistake. And I think that's where the pivoting will happen. So if you are failing and you're learning from that failure so that you don't repeat that same failure again, I think failure is a fantastic thing. And I have seen that in my life. Like I said in my introduction, I have been successful, but a large part of that success is because I failed. I tried something, some of it worked, some of it didn't work. And I'm glad it didn't work, because that gave me a learning so that I could do something else in future. So failure, in my view, is very, very important. If you look at the the startup or the entrepreneurial ecosystem around the world. People say Israel, people say Silicon Valley, people say a few places are leaders in this. And if you were to go back and analyze what happens in these ecosystems, you'll realize that they are people who actually celebrate failure. And that's what is required. If you were to meet an entrepreneur in Silicon Valley who comes on stage and says, I tried 3 startups and you know what, 3 of them failed, he is more likely to get a standing ovation to say, phenomenal, we like the way you went about it to start again, and to start again. Whereas if something like that was to happen in some other ecosystems, quite often even true for us in India, he will be branded as a failure. And after the second time, nobody will look at that person and nobody will call him. I think that's the cultural shift, in my view, which needs to happen. And I want to encourage everyone who is looking at experimenting, and this is not meant just for students, this is meant for every individual, this is meant for every human being, that if you are experimenting, which we must on a daily basis, don't worry about failure. If you fail, no problem at all. Embrace the failure just as beautifully as you will embrace success. All that you need to do in the difference is, in success, you need to have gratitude and you need to have humility. In failure, you need to have learning and you need to have introspection. So some emotional difference exists between success and failure, but I think both are equally important. So let's not kind of undervalue and put a negative emotion around failure. That's my very, very strong belief. A lot of people call me an eternal optimist because I feel that failure is one of the best things to happen. I tell a lot of youngsters who come to me for coaching or for mentoring that it's very important that in your early career or early life, you fail multiple times, because that's when your true learning will happen. And a lot of times people find this very controversial, saying, oh, I have come to you to get coached and all you're telling me is go and fail. I want to learn from you how I should succeed. And I keep going back to the same concept that failure is a fantastic thing from which we can learn. So I would very strongly urge, all of you listening to me today, that do not worry about failure and wear failure as a badge of pride and talk about that. I am working towards the fact that how can we invite failed entrepreneurs to come and talk to all of us about what did they learn from their failure, and is there anything that the rest of the world can learn from what they learned, because that's when the world will become a far more beautiful place. Just imagine a world where everyone succeeded, not a single person failed. Can you imagine what that world would be? That world will be full of individuals who are, bloated egos and living in a world where they think nothing can go wrong. Whatever I touch is gold. I wouldn't want to live in a world like that, because there's just no learning. I'm not growing. Anything I do, I succeed, and anything anyone else does succeeds. What's the differentiation that's going to be existing? What is it that I can be differentiated from the rest of the world? So I think failure is as important as success. And I would like to take this opportunity to wish all of you a fantastic 2021 ahead. And when we live in what I am calling the co-COVID world, the pandemic has taught us many things. One of which is that in a lot of things we will fail, because whatever was our grand plan that we created earlier, a lot of those grand plans went out of the window because a lot of things were out of our control. Now, what did we learn out of that? How are we going to live with that in the world which is going to be post-pandemic? A lot of us are saying, we will wait for the vaccination, we will wait for social distancing to go away. In my view, none of this is going to happen. We are now going to be living in a world I call co-COVID world, which is to live with the virus, live with the changes that have happened. which means again, we have to learn and we have to put those learnings into place and live a new life, which is something which didn't exist prior to February 2020. And that world, failure is going to be an extremely important aspect. So go ahead, experiment, go ahead, fail. And if you do fail, go ahead with life with the same zeal that you would have gone with success, maybe even better zeal, that now I have a few lessons in my bag and hence I can be a better human being, a better business person going forward. So here's wishing you a fantastic 2021 in the co-COVID world. Go fail. It's okay. Fail, and then you will succeed. And when you do succeed, that success will be phenomenal, more powerful, because it's coming from a lot of learning that you got from your failure. Wish you all the best and see you on the other side of failure.